Ko Rahui Katani.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Just over 2 years ago, my colleague Tūrero Flavel took the opportunity in question time to ask the Minister for Broadcasting how he could best ensure that the participation of Māori can be clearly identified and the presence of a significant Māori voice can be heard. I thought this was a really good question and one that many Māori viewers were thinking about in the aftermath of that embarrassing admission of the TVNZ boss that TVNZ was meeting its commitments to Māori in such programs as Police 10-7 and Shortland Street. In his reply, Dr Coleman responded that the statutory function that includes directing Māori perspectives will be included in the Television New Zealand Amendment Act. He went further, suggesting that TVNZ has a specific Māori content strategy and its commitment to Māori programming will not change. New Zealand On Air also has a specific strategy for Māori programming. And finally, he noted that government is, of course, a supporter of Māori television. Well, that sounded all well and good. So in November last year, I actually asked the Minister in question time myself, would he like to celebrate the fulfilment of the Crown's treaty and legal obligations to protect and promote Māori language through broadcasting, and is weakening the TVNZ Charter the best way to achieve that? Dr Coleman obviously thought it was okay to do so. I asked him, is he aware that there are statutory and legal obligations on TVNZ as a result of the Privy Council's findings in the New Zealand Māori Council broadcasting case in 1993, and what is he doing to implement those obligations? Dr Coleman obviously misunderstood my question and tried to say that New Zealand On Air and Te Māngai Pāhua are carrying out that function. I wanted to know what TVNZ was doing, so I was allowed to repeat the question. Dr Coleman said yes, and they are being honoured through the new statutory functions for TVNZ. In fact, if we look at this new bill, this amendment bill, we find that they are not. Many other speakers here have noted that very few material changes were recommended following select committee. If we're looking at just one aspect of the bill, the archived works, we might think that that was acceptable. The changes recommended specify that the definition of archived work should be changed to make it clear that it would apply only to works made on or before 27 May 1989, for which TVNZ owns the whole copyright. It also recommended that archived works must be screened free to the viewer, but between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. on any day of the week on TV1 and TV2, or be subject to a licence that is sold for profit by TVNZ to screen on any other platform. It therefore ensures that TVNZ cannot use the works for profit only. When we looked through the submissions, it was evident that the changes around archived works were generally supported, but there were a couple of provisos that stood out for us. In the submission for Māori television, it was noted that they were supportive of the objectives of the bill to allow material within the TVNZ archive to be seen again, but there was a concern noted around the tentative nature of some of the wording proposed. As a case in point, the new section 29C1B states, provided that TVNZ complies with the requirements of this part, it may grant the Māori television service the right to screen and archived work under any arrangement agreed between that service and TVNZ. The use of the words may grant suggests that TVNZ would no longer have an obligation to provide access to Māori television, only an option to do so at their discretion. Māori television challenged this as contrary to the Crown undertakings made to the court in 1991, as reflected by the 1991 Crown TVNZ agreement. In the arguments they put forward, they stated that news and current affairs programs and others of an historical or review nature make up a significant proportion of the programs broadcast by Māori television, and any restriction on Māori television's access to the archival material in the New Zealand TVNZ archive could have a significant negative impact on Māori television's ability to produce and the quality of these new programs. It would also be potentially an anti-competitive, meaning only TVNZ can use this archive material for the production of new programs. Now, where these concerns become even more disturbing is when we look through the entirety of the bill and note as the Human Rights Commission stated explicitly, the stark references to Māori in the bill itself. In the view of the Human Rights Commission, the removal of the Charter from the Act leaves a gap in explicitly and specifically setting out the responsibilities of a public broadcaster to reflect the biculturalism of the New Zealand state and the diversity of New Zealand society. And so I want at this point to refresh our collective memory about exactly what the TVNZ Charter does say about Māori. It says it shall provide shared experiences that contribute to a sense of citizenship and national identity, and ensure in its programs and program planning the participation of Māori and the presence of a significant Māori voice. And it goes even further than broad statements of principle to state that in fulfilment of these objectives, TVNZ will feature programs that serve the interests and informational needs of Māori audiences, including programs promoting the Māori language and programs addressing Māori culture, history and current issues. I'd like the House to compare the detail and the specificity of these provisions with the bare-bones statement in the new Section 12.2, namely that in carrying out its functions, TVNZ must provide high-quality content that encompasses both New Zealand and international content and reflects Māori perspectives. Mr Speaker, there is a world of difference between the participation of Māori and the presence of a significant Māori voice and reflecting Māori perspectives. As the Human Rights Commission spells out in its submission, a mere gesture towards Māori perspectives goes nowhere towards ensuring the genuine representation of Māori at all levels of television programming. And I cannot help but contrast this bill with the amazing precedent that has occurred today with the groundbreaking initiative in establishing a Māori working group to help steer the rollout of the government's rural broadband initiative. Ngā Pūwaia grew out of a submission by the Māori Economic Task Force on the government's rural broadband initiative. It's about taking every opportunity to strengthen Māori participation in developing this nation. The working group is designed to ensure Māori can maximise opportunities for economic development and that Māori views are represented as the initiative progresses. The working group, representing a range of Māori working in the ICT sector and iwi and economic leaders, will work with Vodafone, Telecom and the government to ensure that Māori communities do not miss out on the promise of the digital age. And I want to commend Minister Joyce for working so well with the Māori Party, for honouring the relationship that we have entered into in order to ensure the influence and the integrity of the Māori voice is heard in all its many dimensions. And if we had one message for Dr Coleman, it would be to look to the leadership offered by this announcement today and by his colleagues in affirming the responsibilities of Television New Zealand in meeting its obligations to Māori. So we leave this debate with these points. The Māori Party can see no benefit to Māori in stripping away the substance of the Charter and effectively leaving TVNZ to run its own ship. We are also concerned about the tentative nature of some of the wording and the very scant reference to Māori in the bill. We would hope that Ngā Pūwaia becomes a significant benchmark for enhancing the quality of this bill, and we place on record our absolute commitment to working with the government to ensure once again the participation of Māori and the presence of a significant Māori voice in TVNZ program and program planning. Kia ora.
Call Katrina Shanks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The purpose of this